the hope that each of us has to build a new world order in which nations and peoples with different systems and different values can live together in peace.
A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order.
We will get to an era where we will have multiplied the intelligence and intellectual capability of the human-machine civilization a billionfold compared to today. So we call it a singularity.
We have almost infinite computing power, and that could in principle resurrect everybody who ever lived by simulating all possible people who ever existed.
Perhaps one even greater than at the time of the Industrial Revolution. A new world order was created.
There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world that we have to bring about together with other countries. A different consciousness of what a world order is.
This is Canary Cry Radio Test Feed.
Hey everybody, thanks for checking out Canary Cry Radio. This is our first episode. We're trying this thing out. I don't know if it's going to work. We were sitting here cracking up for the last 10 minutes trying to get started, so I am going to go by the name of Gonz, and
I will be going by the name of Basil.
Basil.
Basil and Gonz.
And it's spelled like basil.
Like the herb.
Like the herb.
Only it's a name. All right, well, it's March 15th, 2012, and again, thanks for tuning in, and we're going to start a conversation here, especially today, about two different things. Why don't you tell us what they are, Gonz?
Well, this whole podcast thing is new to both of us, but there's a lot of shows with the same kind of ilk that are stopping, or they're ending their shows. And so we figured we can start something up that's a little bit different. Basil is a graphic designer. I do sound editing and stuff. So we're gonna start just talking as we were setting up. As Basil and I were setting up, I'm gonna have to get used to that. Obviously his name's really not Basil, but
don't tell them that.
Oh yeah, sorry, Basil. So as we're setting this website up, and you can visit the website. Obviously, if you are listening to this, you've been to the website. It's called canarycryradio.com, and all the graphics done there is done by Basil. And
if you're wondering where the name Canary Cry Radio came from, it's to those of you in the know. You can explain it to your friends, but back in the 20th century, coal miners would bring canaries down into the mines with them, and they did this because the canaries were a lot more sensitive to toxic chemicals and gases and things that would be released during the mining process. And when the miners would hear the cries of the canary, or sometimes the canary would just drop dead, the miners would see that as a sign that they need to get their tail out of there. So,
did the canaries actually cry, or did they just die?
They would start by crying, I'm assuming, and then they would die.
Okay. So it's a literal cry, not necessarily just a metaphorical cry.
It's a cry of help.
Okay.
Of asphyxiation by all sorts of geological chemicals.
Right. And so and so that the reason why we're calling it that is because we are trying to give a heads up, I guess, be the dying canary, if you will.
Be the canary to give the sign that something is wrong, because a lot of people are privy to it, and hopefully if you found this, you found it because you were looking for some material and some information on just the things that are wrong with the world right now and the things that are coming up and what you can do about it. And if you found us by some other means, congratulations, because you're about to hear exactly what you needed to hear, and there's a reason why you're here.
Right.
So welcome.
And just as a brief here, we're at a church, so we're both Christians, and all the implications there, what that means. We'll get into all that. We're not like crazy. Well, I guess I've been labeled a Bible thumper, but it's whatever that means, right? Because it's we're not trying to shove religion down anyone's throat or anything like that. We're just trying to inform you. We just have a particular spiritual perspective on things, and so if you're not a Christian, then you don't have to listen to us anyway, but hopefully we'll provide a perspective that's unique, at least hear us out. And if you are, then these are just things that I think you should be aware of.
Yeah, and one of the great things about Canary Cry Radio is we are really passionate about educating the church and other Christians about the sort of things that are ignored, some sinister things that are happening in the world that have very real spiritual consequences, and as well are fulfilling prophecy that a lot of Christians have been hearing for a long time and are in the Bible, and a lot of them are just not privy to what's happening in the world.
Right, and so our church, I've talked about this before, but this is our first show, so I guess I haven't, but I'll mention it now. Our church is doing this big thing. It's on sex, and so the church is patting themselves on the back like, oh, it's so amazing that this church is talking about sex, and there's nothing wrong with that. But from my perspective, it's like, all right, the church is finally talking about this. It's it's a cultural thing that happened, in the 60s, 50s, 60s or something, the whole free sexual revolution type thing. So for the church to be talking about it, it's great, but we're half a century behind. So in light of that, we just want to kind of maybe try to look ahead instead of always trying to pick up the pieces to culture and society and things like that. So that was a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
We didn't really plan to go there. But anyway,
we're about 10 minutes in now.
Plans don't really ever work out anyway. So, one of the things we wanted to talk about today was tracking, right?
Yeah, the internet tracking. Just something to keep in mind while you are perusing through your conspiracy websites today, and getting in the know on the new things that you need to be aware of. And every website you go to, as most of you will know, you're being tracked by several different companies for a lot of different purposes. And it's a big thing coming up in the news, especially recently. A lot of companies are coming out with things to let you know who's tracking you. A lot of companies are coming out with things to completely halt you being tracked altogether, and we'll give you some links to those things if you're interested a little bit later. But I think we need to talk about the implications of things like this, and is it really a terrible thing? Is it not? Where could it go? What are the dangers of this, if there are any?
Well, you have that, and I think we'll put in the show notes too, you have the little track blocker.
Yeah.
Is it Firefox, or is it just any platform?
It's any platform. I have it for Chrome. Okay. It's called DNT Plus, Do Not Track Plus, and it's this great little thing that every website that I visit, it'll count every company, every piece of software that tracks where I'm going, and tells me who it is, and it also blocks them. So it's a really great little tool, and you can get the link to that in the notes there.
Do you think there is a record? I mean, obviously that software keeps track of the number of blocks it's made and things like that.
And that's definitely a possibility, and I'm sure it's happening. But let's take a couple steps back, and let's talk about the corporate perspective, or the front, if you will, of why we're being tracked, right. and the seemingly benign purposes of that.
Right.
So a lot of companies like Google Analytics, and almost every company, every large software company is tracking things. Facebook tracks you, Twitter tracks you, everything tracks you. And the purpose is for a more customized internet, to customize it to you, to keep track of what you're interested in, to look at your habits, and then sort of tailor the internet, tailor your own internet experience to what advertisers can give you. It'll omit certain search results depending on your sort of online profile that's put together by this big bad data that they sort of put together for, as a profile for you, and kept for others to see. And another thing is that is a little bit more sinister, is that your profile is actually bought and sold many times every day to different companies, ad companies, and all sorts of things like that. So here's the question is, are you okay with being tracked everywhere you go if it's for, quote-unquote, your own good? We're tailoring the internet to you.
Right, but the thing that's interesting is that you bring up all the points of why we're being tracked, but then there's never a consensus of whether we're okay with it. As far as like we never gave permission for them to track us, basically.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest problems that personally I have. It is, if they want to tailor my internet, whatever. If they want to give me ads that I'll actually care about, I can totally see the good intentions in that. But the fact that it's happening behind our backs, it's happening at a software level that most people don't even know it's happening, is a little bit sneaky for me. It's a little bit too sneaky, and that's the part that makes me a little bit suspicious. If it is totally benign, if it is something that nobody should be worrying about, then why keep it so secret?
Right. Yeah, that's true. And a lot of this, I think, are just the baby steps of what could be. And I think a lot of people have seen movies like Minority Report and, Pre-Crime Lab trying to estimate a possible crime that happens and arresting that person before they commit the crime.
Oh, absolutely. The implications of the possibilities of a more evolved version of what we're seeing happening in just its infantile stages right now is very dangerous when you think about it. But let's take a step back for 1 second, and when I was
it seems like I keep wanting to go forward and you keep wanting to take a step back.
Well, I just want to make sure we get the full picture on things. For instance, the tailoring of the internet to you. Now, what will happen is, due to what's on your, profile out in the cloud that they have constructed around you, your search results are actually tailored to your profile. So you're actually missing out on a whole part of the internet that is out there that they're just simply not showing you because they don't think you want to see it. That's a big problem for a lot of people, especially, the free internet people, is they want the entire world of information at their fingertips. They don't want to be labeled to. They don't want to be led by the nose to what they're looking for.
Right.
And what this is happening in a lot of cases is it's siphoning all the possibilities of the world out there, the huge amount of information that's here on planet Earth waiting for us to grab through the internet, is being filtered through this sort of pseudo picture of what companies think we are.
Right.
They're assuming they know us. They assume that they know what we want, and that's a big problem. For me, at least, I want the whole world at my fingertips. I don't want the whole world that Google wants me to see.
Right. Well, do you think, a question for you, do you think at some point the internet is going to become restricted? I know in other countries that's already the case. Websites are blocked. I mean, websites like ours, can potentially, right now, no one knows about it, so it's fine. But over time, people can figure out what we're talking about, what we're saying, and it can become restricted area.
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting point, especially when you bring up the international thing. Because yes, there are countries, say in the Middle East, that are shutting down Twitter or Facebook or sort of making things on the internet outlaws. But there's other parts of the world, say in a lot of places in Europe, who are fighting to open up everything.
Right.
The United States is putting a lot of pressure on a lot of people to constrict the internet and what's allowed on the internet vis-a-vis copyright infringements and sort of things like this. And a lot of places are fighting to help piracy. They're open to piracy. They don't like America pressuring them into these sort of corporate-minded laws like ACTA and PIPA and all the new ones that are coming out. And so it's a really interesting thing to bring up in the international point. But in my opinion, sadly, I think that there will be some sort of chaining of the internet, and and the biggest problem is that I think it starts here. It's starting with our profile.
Right.
It's starting with this picture that they're making of us out in the clouds somewhere.
Well, it's like any other. It's like the war on terror, or it's any kind of false flag.
It's profiling. Exactly.
It's actually creating an image that, oh, there's this danger. We need to somehow squash it and control it so that there's no threat.
Exactly.
It's like anything else.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, there's definitely a layer of that happening on the the higher echelons of where these decisions are being made.
Right.
Do not think for a second that your profile is not looked at by the government, is not tracked. Your IP is tracked at every moment.
Well, especially now that we've done this podcast.
Oh yeah, we're on a blacklist for sure here. but which brings up another point, which is anonymous and hacktivism and things like this, who are actually doing a very good job at fighting to keep the internet free, and they are causing a lot of trouble. I'm not one to say exactly how much damage they're doing in the long run, or what's, but they are.
But the fact that they're there trying to fight it is indicating that there is already a backlash or suppression starting to occur.
And the support that they're getting from the public is amazing. And they, Anonymous draws their image from a movie called V for Vendetta.
Right.
And a big concept of that movie was, you cannot kill an idea. You cannot arrest an idea. You can kill, you can arrest, you can silence people, but an idea will spread like a virus.
Right.
And that's exactly what's happening now. We're starting to, some of the anonymous guys, the Lulset guys are getting busted. Everybody's getting busted. We're hearing that Anonymous is sort of starting to putter out, which is a complete lie if you ask me. But it's the fact that it's happening, and the fact that it is such a big deal, and the fact that this idea is entering into everybody's brain, I think is an absolute victory for Anonymous, an absolute victory for global freedom, an absolute victory for a free internet, and an absolute victory for the personal liberty of your intake of information.
Right. Well, on the flip side of that, what do you think, because when you say this global free information, I can't help but think about this, tying it back to prophetic text.
Absolutely.
And it talks about peace and safety as this facade that's going to be put upon the world, that the world wants this free and open society, that everything is everyone has this access to goods, information, ideas. So, if you watch something like Zeitgeist moving forward, and you watch them talk about this mechanical society where everyone's provided for, and so everyone's happy, and everyone's got everything they need, and all the information, and I can't remember the guy's name, Jack. Well, I'm sure somebody listening knows, but
we'll put it in the notes.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes. He's a big proponent of technocracy, and he's saying, art and music and all these things, we're just going to give it away for free because it's going to be something that we want to give away for free.
Yeah,
money's not going to tie us down. All this stuff,
which is a wonderful idea.
It's a wonderful idea,
surface level.
So where do you see that? Where's the line as far as, okay, it's great that they're keeping this open kind of idea, forum, spectrum, the internet, and they're fighting for it, but at what point does the fighting for it become actually a bigger part of the bigger agenda?
I think the downfall of the entire issue, the whole degradation of all the good that's being done right now, will take place when the powers that be learn to use that against the people. For instance, we're fighting for the freedom. Well, suddenly, maybe the powers that be take that momentum and sort of pull it into their own direction.
Right.
Sort of like a Bagua fighter or something who use their enemy's own momentum to take them down.
Or Aikido.
Exactly, or Aikido. And I can't say exactly what that would look like at this point, but there are very smart people in charge, and I'm sure something is already in the works.
Right.
And, a lot of things are inevitable, but I think that we shouldn't not fight for freedom for the fear that the freedom will turn against us.
Right. Good point. Do you have anything else you want to say on that? Do you have any other?
I think that's about it. That's,
Well, I think so. I'm going to move it forward now because it ties into some of the topics that we'll be discussing on the show, which is transhumanism, which not everybody knows about and not everybody really, I don't think, cares about. I've talked to people, in the church community, in the not church community, that some kind of know what it is, some don't know what it is. But basically, I'm going to read a little thing here. It's on transhumanism.asu.edu. They have a little section, Arizona State University, the Center for the Study of Religion and Conflict, and they have a website. They've already started this conversation. And so I'm just going to read it real quick. It says, the theme of transhumanism, it says, humanity stands now on the precipice of a new phase in human evolution, referred to as post-humanism or transhumanism. This new phase emerges due to the confluence of new developments in the life sciences, example, genomics, stem cell research, genetic enhancement, germline engineering, technology, i.e. robotics, nanotechnology, pattern recognition technologies, and neuroscience, et cetera, et cetera. And so,
Are we still rolling?
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
I'll edit it. That's why editing is good.
Yeah, I think.
Or we can not edit it
kind of
and
funny
be
how
like,
it's like,
hey, we almost got shut down.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
so
what
we're
was
back.
I saying? Okay, so genomics, stem cell research, genetic enhancement, germline engineering in the technologies, for example, robotics, nanotechnology, pattern recognition technologies, and the neurosciences, neuropharmacology, and artificial intelligence. Today, human beings are not only able to enhance their own performance and make important strides against devastating disease such as cancer, diabetes, and AIDS, but also endow humanity engineered traits to future generations. The new technologies may be able to produce human beings with enhanced capabilities who will live longer and provide the capacity to create and modify, i.e. clone and engineer, existing forms of life, including humans. In the transhuman phase, humans will become their own makers, transforming their environment and themselves. Proponents of transhumanism believe that advances in robotics, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and genomics, will liberate humanity from pain and suffering. Presumably, in transhumanism age, in the transhuman age, humanity will conquer the problems of aging, disease, poverty, and hunger, finally actualizing happiness in this life.
Finally actualizing happiness in this life. Yeah, so that is a good little overview of what transhumanism is there. And the very scary part of it, people, is that it's an actual movement. There is an actual push towards this happening. There's the research going on, and all it would take is a sort of technocratic decision to make this policy. And I firmly believe that this will begin happening in at least my lifetime.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, is that technocracy is something that I've been looking at a lot recently. And essentially, as an overview of what that is, in the 1930s, they started a movement, all these engineers, scientists, technicians, these people that were part of the modern creation of computers and stuff like that. They didn't have computers then, but these people began to form a group right after the Depression, because they figured capitalism wasn't working. So they created Technocracy Inc., and they tried to externalize this idea that, with us, these smart scientist people running the show, we can create a global, or national at the time was their ideal, society where there will be a systematic deployment of goods and services and things evenly and under the provision of these scientists, and their idea of a fair way to have everyone be happy living in this society.
Right. So essentially, they are pushing for instead of politicians running the show,
right,
we have scientists, engineers, technicians, things
right,
like that. In place of politicians running the show,
right,
legislation, everything, and sort of their idea is to run the country, or now the world,
right,
sort of like a well-oiled machine.
Right, right. And what's scary is how much of it is actually being deployed now. And since the 1970s, when the Trilateral Commission, and I think you pronounce it Brzezinski, one of the guys who founded the Trilateral Commission, had the same ideal, the technocracy ideal. And today, I read an article that I'll try to link to, and I've been writing on this on my blog, which is facelikethessun.com. There has been a deployment of these things called smart meters, and actually in Michigan, I think they had like 1.8 million smart meters deployed into various counties in Michigan.
And what are those?
So what smart meters do is through Wi-Fi, and they're looking at a higher form of Wi-Fi now, but right now it's Wi-Fi. These little devices are put on the side of homes and apartment buildings, and they basically monitor your electricity. And so any appliance you use, any amount of electricity you use, it's all being monitored, and it's all being collected. The data is being collected. And what's interesting is there's groups that are working together, Verizon and GE and all these different groups are working together to formulate this system.
Now, what's the difference between the smart meters and the regular electricity meter that I have on the side of my house?
Well, everything's digitized now. So a normal electrical meter might still have, a little bit of analog, independence as far as like we're not tracking everything. We only know when there's something's wrong or something's out. Well, now they're literally measuring every amount of consumption and use. And
are they keeping? They're keeping track of the actual use of the electricity. They know when you turn on your blender.
Right, exactly.
And they know when you're using your computer.
Right.
They know when you're using your electric shaver.
Right.
Okay.
So they're monitoring that, and eventually what they want to get to is a point where every appliance, not just our computers, but our, like you said, like a dishwasher, washing machine, all these things have a chip in it that keeps count. And where it's really leading to is eventually a global grid called the smart grid, which smart grid technologies is already being discussed. A control base where our economy becomes based on energy. And I talk about that again in my blog. But instead of money, our currency becomes energy. So we're kind of deployed like, oh, you have this amount of energy that you can use to do whatever you need. But if you exceed it, you either not have it or you have to, somehow do something to get it back. And how it ties into transhumanism is that once the human body becomes digitized, for lack of a better term, computerized or whatever, the human being essentially is going to become integrated into that grid and locked in.
Now let's talk about a little bit about what you just said, the digitization of the human being.
Right.
What exactly does that look like? I know we're looking at all sorts of advancements in integrating machines into the human body. I mean, the pacemaker has been around for forever.
Right.
What else is that? What is that looking like now?
Well, part of the biggest problem is not just the like you said, there's technologies, obviously, knee replacement, contact lenses, things like that. Those are enhancements, quote unquote, but when you digitize, when I say digitize, it's more of a fusion of the machine and the biological part of who we are. So instead of having our cell phones as part of us, and we're already kind of being indoctrinated by using our cell phones, using our computers, having access to information at our fingertips. It's actually going to be embedded in us.
Yeah.
It's going to be part of who we are as humans. Born with a chip or whatever it looks like. I don't exactly know what it looks like, but with things like nanotechnology, we're able to construct little tiny things that are calculated to do certain tasks that are in our body, in our bloodstream, things like that.
Well, for instance, the carbon capsules for astronauts.
Yeah.
This new technology where they've created these tiny capsules full of certain medications or different things that the body might need, and what they do is they're inserted into the leg of the astronaut, and the astronaut is just the guinea pig in this example, but. And because space is filled with all sorts of harmful things that are, not the best thing to be subject to, especially when you're 93 million miles away from the nearest hospital. So what they've done is these carbon capsules are implanted in the leg. They automatically sense when something is wrong with the natural biology of the human being that they are implanted in, and they
can report.
They release whatever is needed.
Right.
And
they actually, I saw an article the other day that talked about 8 women who were basically lab rats to that.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like right under the skin, a little thing that monitors their.
And that's just the very beginning.
That's just the very beginning.
And so that's the scary part about all of this. It sounds like a movie. It sounds like a book that we've been reading for 50 years. Right. It sounds like Aldous Huxley or something like that. Right. But it's actually happening now, and very little people see it coming. We're like the frog in the pot of water.
Right.
And then before we know it, we're gonna need to make the choice.
Right.
And that brings us into, as believers, what does this mean to us?
Well, that's the thing, is that as we gain control of our biological genetic makeup, what it seems to be leading to is kind of this breakdown of what it means to be a human being. Mm-hmm. And not just the ethical or philosophical questions. Those are obviously there, and I think it's important to discuss them. But really the actual physical breakdown of the human being and what that means. And as believers, this is a big rabbit trail. But I believe that this happened once before on planet Earth. So if you look at the biblical accounts of Genesis 6 to talk about the sons of God who came down, mated with women, created the Nephilim, and the reason why God had to flood the earth was not just because there's bad stuff going on. Yeah, people were bad, but it wasn't that. And I often, when I bring this up, I often get non-believers saying, your God is evil because he drowned babies, innocent babies and things like that. But if you step back and look at why God really flooded the earth, you start to see that there was a genetic problem, some kind of tainting with
some sort of corruption,
some corruption of the actual image that we were created as, so as to destroy the human line, basically.
Right.
And it makes a lot of sense in my head because a lot of the mythological creatures you see in Greek mythology, the Roman mythology, Roman gods, a lot of the gods you see in Hindu religion with all these things seem to point towards something like this happening at one point.
Well, even more of almost a fetish. That's not the right word. Almost more of an obsession with the changing of human DNA.
Right.
You don't really notice it just in the real world or whatever. But when you think about it and you sit down and you look at all of these ancient beings or quote unquote
creatures
fairy
or
tales or creatures, they're all they're all an experiment.
Right.
It's a lab experiment.
Right.
It's a bird mixed with a man. It's a horse mixed with a man. It's a man and
centaur,
this. And
the minotaurs.
Exactly. It's a man and a fish.
Right.
All of these things are the mixtures of animals and people, and so I think if nothing else, it shows a very ancient obsession with changing who we are at the very core,
right,
and trying to design ourselves for a more specific and quote unquote greater purpose.
Right.
And so I think it's a very good point to bring up.
Right. And what's interesting as the church is that, Jesus actually, well, some people say he wasn't actually referring to this specifically when he says that as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. But, some people have drawn that comparison. But as a last kind of thing to wrap it up, there's an article out on the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. I read a lot of articles here. They're pro-transhumanism people, and the latest article that came out today is an article called "The End of Gender," and basically, the idea is that by figuring out a way to reproduce, not in the traditional females have to have babies kind of perspective, we will transcend gender and become these asexual beings that are basically created in labs.
Yeah, and the parallels are just incredible that you can draw from this real life article suggesting this exact thing. And then you read books that I'm personally obsessed with, Brave New World.
Right.
I'm sure you'll hear me talk about it in many episodes to come. But this is exactly what it is. It's
right.
You create humans. They're not born. In fact, being born is seen as a disgusting thing.
Right.
Because it
it's
adds,
so primitive.
It's primitive, and it adds more, and it separates man from woman, and it sort of does this thing. And at the end of the transhumanism paragraph that we read before is finally actualizing happiness in this life,
right.
which was exactly what happened in the book. This was all done because now we can be happy.
Right.
And now we finally got things down. We've made all the changes. We've fixed all the problems that God overlooked, and now we can be happy.
Right.
And obviously, if you've read the book, that that's not the case.
Yeah. And that's really what it comes down to with any endeavor. It seems like, and probably a lot of things we'll be discussing throughout the show, the shows to come, is that there is this push for peace, for happiness,
mm-hmm.
And there is this ideal that has been the human being has been trying to reach for such a long time,
right?
And really, from as being Christians, coming from the biblical perspective, it's really interesting that in the Garden of Eden, the serpent said, ye shall be as gods.
Mm-hmm.
You will be like gods. You want to be like gods. And essentially what we're trying to do is trying to be like God,
exactly.
basically being able to create our own reality, being able to attain happiness without any kind of death or pain or anything like that. And it's actually throwing off our central it's actually kind of throwing off the center of who we are and what we're actually made to be.
Absolutely.
And as Christians, we are promised an actual heaven, an actual resurrected body. We're promised all these things that that humanity is trying to achieve, which is the irony behind the entire thing.
Yeah.
And so hopefully we'll be discussing a lot more of those things in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. And just one quick thing before we end here is that is the most sinister part about the whole thing, is that it's brought to us and it's being developed under this guise of this will bring peace. This is what will bring happiness.
Right.
And if you can tell just from the Bible that that is the guise that it will come from, or come under, and just to be aware of that. And so yeah.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this will be the first of many shows to come. But if you stuck around this long, thanks for checking it out. And
yeah, absolutely. And thanks. We just did an overview of a few different things here.
Yeah.
So, and there will be a lot more on all of these topics to come. And so tune in again. And we'll see you guys next time.
Later.
Thanks for listening to Canary Cry Radio. If you're interested and want to know more, please go to canarycryradio.com Look us up on Facebook at facebook.com/Canary Cry Radio, or look us up on Twitter